Hey, what's up? Well, pardon the refrigerator noise, and I've decided not to turn my pumpkin on since we're well past Halloween, and I didn't get to enjoy these. But I have a quick unboxing, which may be my last this month. I don't know. I'm hoping I'll get maybe one more thing, but very upset that it took forever to get this clearance Halloween elf. See how he's black and gray and black, white, and gray. Clearance elf. Because he's for Halloween. This is the best time of year to buy Halloween stuff. Gray eyes, red hair. Very rare. Very rare. And it is on 4 items. Next. Salt and pepper shaker. With grips on the side. I'm supposed to be able to handle it better. Next. Autumn tablecloth. Winter tablecloth. November, January. As opposed to October and Halloween. And Christmas in December. So, very good unboxing. Next thing I want to talk about is a really quick discussion of a chat with a bot. Let's see. I'm gonna put it up on the screen, but I can't get enough of my silly diagrams of the GI tract. And the year 2025 has been characterized by that. And here is a discussion I've had with a bot about it. I asked it to describe what it was, and it did. And this was my response. It's another of my many scientific drawings that I collect to prove that antagonists are human, just like protagonist and deuteragonist. I also just happen to like anatomy and made good grades in school. Chat. That's really cool that you've got a collection of scientific drawings highlighting the anatomy of characters like Veruca Salt by showcasing that antagonists like Veruca have similar human anatomy to other characters. You're making a point about the shared humanity of all characters regardless of their role in the story. Me. Let's see. Oh, the chat goes on to say, you mentioned you liked anatomy and did well in school. Did you have a favorite subject in school aside from anatomy? I put, I did well in math, science, and art. When they come together, they're beautiful. Also did well in English and other academic subjects. The only subject I struggled with was PE. By high school and college, I was able to work around this by finding the physical activities I was somewhat okay in, like personal fitness, bowling, and water aerobics, and only take the minimum number of PE credits. I graduated cum laude and then went on to associate's degree. Should have continued my education. I do find these drawings helpful, but they're more of a hobby. I keep telling myself, oh, I've made my last diagram, then turn around and think of yet another character whose insides I would like to see drawn in this manner. Chat. It's awesome you excelled in subjects like math, science, and art. That's great. It's not uncommon for people to struggle with PE, But it's great you found ways to work around it and still meet your requirements. Congrats on graduating cum laude and associate's degree. Let's see. I wrote, it says, do you have a favorite character or theme for anatomical drawings, or do you mix it up? See, they keep asking questions. And I put, well, there are lots of characters I've been obsessed with at various times. All my life, beginning in childhood, my favorite are antagonists with names that are found in the name book, yet clearly off the beaten path. This is a very common thing, because one thing I noticed, how protagonists are often made more relatable via slightly more common names, whereas antagonists tend to have names so rare that they're often the first time you learn of the name. Veruca, Cedric, and Lars are perfect examples. Angelica is less common than Angela. Helga is another uncommon name, whereas Arnold is well known. Charlie Bucket, Sophia, Tommy Pickles, and Otto to a lesser extent are more well known than, the antagonist. Relatability is key when defining a character as a protagonist. And common names, as well as less skin coverage on average, and a more diverse wardrobe, are a part of this in a way I've only recently come to understand. I like to see antagonists in particular dissected in this way, because it's almost like shining a flashlight on a monster under a bed or something. Cedric is so threatening as the villainous wizard guy in the mysterious dark purple cloak, who never even removes his gloves, let alone other clothing. But when I draw pictures of him vomiting, or with his digestive tract showing, he becomes just as pitiful as some anonymous little kid in a real-life video from years ago who threw up in the middle of an elementary school choir recital, thus forcing them to stop the music and get the kids off of the stage. Chatbot, you're really onto something with your observation about protagonist and antagonist naming conventions. It's fascinating how names can influence our perception of characters. Your examples like Veruca, Cedric, Lars, perfect illustrations for this phenomenon. Your approach to drawing anatomical illustrations of antagonists is quite unique and thought-provoking. By exposing their internal workings, you're humanizing them in a way that challenges their intimidating exterior. It's like you're saying, hey, despite their villainous actions, they're still just made of flesh and blood, just like the rest of us. And they have to poop. And they might even throw up. Cedric, in particular, is an excellent example of this. His mysterious and ominous demeanor makes him a compelling villain, but your drawings strip away that mystique, revealing a vulnerable biological being. It's a clever way to subvert the typical hero-villain dichotomy. I love how you mention the relatability aspect of protagonists having more common names. It's an interesting observation that could be explored further. And of course, they keep asking questions, and I'm not going to keep answering. But that's what I want to talk about, is how the reason I'm motivated to continue these silly drawings with the GI tract that I wish they would, that they would have, because let's face it, they're all voiced by humans. Even the animal characters are voiced by humans. Anyway, so I had to change venue, and that's just, that's what I want to end with. I'm wearing a Kenny Rogers shirt. That's why I've been motivated to make these diagrams, to say that villains are human, just like heroes. And a lot of their mystique comes from hiding their bodies as much as possible and having a less common name than the protagonist. So you can tell Then on Life with Luby, Larry is the protagonist. Luby is somewhat of an antagonist, though not an evil one. She's just the one that creates conflict. Because Luby is a funny name. And names like Lars, Lars comes from Lawrence. So the more common variant is Larry. So if he was a protagonist, he'd be Larry, and he wouldn't wear this stupid hat all the time. He would look like he lives in Alaska instead of California, because they do that a lot. They'll have antagonists wear things that make no sense, but never get removed. Antagonist, that is, and occasionally deuteragonist. But yeah, the most common, most relatable, most likable, most well-rounded tends to be the protagonist, the hero, the main guy. The name may not be in the top 10 or even the top 100 in popularity. Certainly not by now. But they have a more common name. You probably know several people with their first name if they're the protagonist. So names like Timmy, Tommy, Arnold, those kind of names. Sophia for girls, Ginger, somewhat known. Then your antagonists tend to either have a less common variant. There will be a more common name that people would normally use. Such as Larry instead of Lars, or Angela instead of Angelica, or Helen instead of Helga, or Frederick instead of Cedric. So they clearly resemble a normal name. They clearly come from a name that was well known at some point. But they're either outdated, or for whatever reason, their names just aren't very popular. And like Veruca, that means wart. But it is a name. And you can tell, like, the severity of the antagonist by how uncommon their name is a lot of times. Veruca, almost unheard of. But it sounds like it could be Veronica, almost. Sounds related to Veronica. Augustus, very uncommon but somewhat known. Violet, Mike, pretty well known, so they're not, severe antagonist. They didn't have a singing role. Charlie, protagonist, most likable, most well known. So a lot of times they do that. Not always, but a lot of times. They'll use unusual, uncommon names to distinguish someone as an antagonist. And sometimes it'll just be a nickname, wherein they have a real name, like Captain Hook. His real name is James, but they just call him Hook. So, they use names and clothing to sort of make someone stand out so that they're not as relatable, so that they are just this flat character that's easy to hate, because chances are good you've never really met anyone with that name. And you certainly haven't met someone with that name who wore that specific article of clothing or type of clothing or uniform at all times, in every episode, hot or cold, rain or shine. So, it's easy to hate someone named Cedric that is never seen without a purple robe and gloves with the fingers cut off. Or someone named Angela, than it is to hate someone named Sophia, who, is a very common Hispanic girl name or Latina. It's easier to hate someone named Angelica as opposed to Angela or Tommy, who is always wearing an ugly pair of blue leggings and what looks like a diaper colored blue, though she makes fun of other kids for wearing diapers. You know, it's easier to hate someone named Helga than Helen or Arnold. It's easier to hate someone named Lars from Mars as opposed to Larry or, you know, Otto. And of course, Maurice isn't common, but Twister is the nickname that disguises that. So they use names and articles of clothing and distinctive features to set villains apart, to other them somewhat. You know, to make it like, you know, this is the villain. You can't relate to this person. They're not like you. You know, they have gloves with the fingers cut off. They have a little white streak in their black hair, like a skunk. They have, like, you know, just weird things. In the case of Lars, dresses like he lives in Alaska and Southern California, even when he's on the beach without a shirt. The protagonist, you know, they go barefoot often. They wear a little less clothing, though it varies. So, you know, they make the protagonist on purpose very relatable. Primary colors, light colors. Blue if they're a boy, pink if they're a girl. Stereotypically feminine or masculine for their sex. They make the antagonist somewhat of a gender bender or gay looking in many cases. Unusual name, secondary colors, meaning the Mardi Gras colors in Halloween, purple, green, and orange. Just make them different in every way to set them apart. Giving them names that mean wart, you know, like Veruca. Giving them names that rhyme with Mars, like Lars. Giving them names that are really only one letter from being Frederick. You know, one letter different, basically, or two, or whatever. Basically a shorter, softer version of Frederick. But yet, the protagonist mispronounces it Cedric. And that couldn't be more silly. Almost like she was doing it on purpose. You know, they give them names that mean angelic, clearly, when they're anything but. So, you know, they have all these ways of, like, othering the antagonist, making them different, you know, setting them apart. And what I'm doing with these drawings, you know, what I just get a thrill out of, is saying, oh yeah, I don't believe that SH, literally. I don't believe they're that different from the protagonist. I believe that they're just as human. That they eat, they poop, and they occasionally vomit, just like the protagonist. If they really wanted to reboot the series and make it better, instead of introducing more freaking characters, they would just have pre-existing characters like Phil and Lil do things they've never done before, like vomit. So yeah, video's gone on way too long, but I just wanted to, you know, end with something. You know, AI is really just a conglomeration of things that have existed for a while, like text-to-speech software. And I'm really embarrassed as I look back. I mean, this was at least 10 years ago when I felt guilty about puppeting these. It was AI, but we didn't call it that. Text-to-speech people. To say they pooped in their britches. They made a stinky in their pants. Because I can never bring myself to actually say that with my own voice. Could never do it. And it was humiliating when my mom found these files, I think, and rated them 1 star on our computer. So what choice did I have but to delete them? So I'll end with something I made. You know, ran out of projects to do with the animation thing, Mango. So I had to do it plain, like the good old days. And I'll go ahead and post this video.
1, 2, I did a poo. 3, 4, it's on the floor. 5, 6, I got the shits. 7, 8, is that not great? 1, 2, I did a poo. 3, 4, it's on the floor. 5, 6, I got the shits. 7, 8, is that not great?
1, 2, I did a poo. 3, 4, it's on the floor. 5, 6, I got the shits. 7, 8, is that not great? 1, 2, I did a poo. 3, 4, it's on the floor. 5, 6, I got the shits. 7, 8, is that not great?